Good morning, and thanks so much for tuning into the trade setup. It's a busy week. We've got the MPC lined up as well, but first the US markets, and let's try and discuss what will happen today. So the US markets had, well, a day of a pullback. They were trading in the green, and then they reversed gains and came off as well. But in other cues, which are more important, the 10-year Treasury yield. Remember, we had seen a number which was significantly higher, 4.18 as well at a point of time that really nosedived and came back all the way to 4.03, which is a good thing. Volatility was up, as obviously, ignore that error there, but we know that VIX was up in trade in the US markets on Friday. The dollar index too retreated. In fact, against a basket of most of the global currencies, the dollar index too came off a little bit. So the cues aren't as bad as they may seem. The GIFT Nifty would be indicating a muted start, a flattish start, 19.6 or 7 or thereabouts, but essentially a muted start is what is anticipated. Now the news flow is important. I mentioned this in terms of numbers, but the 10-year Treasury yield though really dived after July payroll numbers showed a softer than expected jobs report. Apple slipped 4.8% in the biggest one-day drop this year. The dollar retreated against most of its developed market peers. And in other news, Barbie, well, quite a stir that Barbie and Oppenheimer today together created. But Barbie individually is set to cross the $1 billion mark in global ticket sales as of today in the US, if you will, or yesterday. Essentially today in the US their time. So this will be interesting to see what it does tomorrow. I'll get you some updates. But it's great from a moviegoer perspective, or just from an economy or a movie economy perspective as well. It'll be great to get that number. To be honest, I haven't seen the movie, but a lot of people say that, contrary to expectations, it's actually done really well. Okay, now what's the trade setup therefore for the day looking like? The prices holding out near the levels of recent swing lows is a small positive for the bulls to my mind. Frankly, let's move on to the trade setup plate. And if we remember that, viewers remember that we got this small uptick in the session on Friday, and that led to a small positive for the bulls. It's very likely that we meander around these levels, these or maybe slightly lower levels at times, with sharp swings on either side and then a bit of a consolidation. So very likely it could happen, but difficult to call it out. It's relatively easier to call out pockets. Now, FMCG, for example, is looking very mixed technically, but the commentary in a rural uptick is a common thread across management. So today, for example, you have Britannia, which will react to numbers, and the volume growth was not the greatest. But the good part is that including Britannia, including Tata Consumer, including Asian Paints, you are hearing commentary about rural growth picking up, which could be considered a small positive. In fact, for a lot of businesses. Keep in mind, it's not the same for all businesses, but largely it's a common thread. Today, you'll hear from Brokerage Consumer as well, and it'll be interesting to see what they have to say about the rural income. But if you ask me, the one pocket which is seeing rock solid momentum and buying at all kinds of levels is pharma. It looks like holding fort and holding the best cards for gains going ahead. So that's to be watched out for. FIIs remain net sellers for the 7th session in a row. They sold stocks worth 556 crores, and DIs bought stocks worth 366 crores. So that kind of remains a common thread. Some IPO updates: SBFC Finance on second day was subscribed about 7 times. All forms of subscription saw good numbers. In fact, I was reading a systematics note which is saying it's a strong buy. And Concord Biotech was subscribed about half a time. HNI portion 1%, but QIB hardly anything. So just 1%. So that shows you the slight dip in subscription there. Clutch of earnings in focus. I'll definitely watch out for Jupiter Wagons because railways have been in focus. There is also Tata Chemicals, which has corrected quite a bit of late because of price cuts. Torrent Pharmaceuticals and Whirlpool of India also remain important, as do Gland Pharma and Brokerage Consumer Products. So clutch of interesting numbers to watch out for. Now, viewers, if you can just get out of the plates, the key point to keep in mind is that some of these stocks in pharma particularly might be showing weak trends on reporter, but the commentary might be constructive. So that's to be watched out for. Piramal Pharma, for example, we saw the numbers and the numbers look wobbly, but they've given some decent commentary on what could happen going ahead. So, and we saw what happened to Lotus Labs post a really abysmal set of numbers and not so positive commentary either, on the face of it. But just the strength that we see in some of those stocks is looking very, very strong. Today, pharma is in focus for more reasons than one, and I'll get to that because there are a lot of stocks which have gotten some US FDA action as well, which they'll have to contend with, including Cipla, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Now, it's a very long list of stocks in news which will react today at 9:15, so bear with me. I haven't been able to cover all. You'll have to excuse me because it's just such a long list that I can't compile it in the 10-15 minutes that we talk on Trade Setup, but I'll try to mark at least all the more important ones. So first, HFCL and Sterlite Technologies. The government has approved spending 1.4 lakh crores on rural broadband project. The BharatNet aims to provide fiber optic internet to 6.4 lakh villages. This is as per Bloomberg, but it's now a known announcement, and therefore the companies which give the optic fiber network in India might be the ones in focus. So watch out for HFCL, watch out for Sterlite Tech. There's also an Aksh optic fiber, if I'm not wrong, but I reckon that the two more liquid names are HFCL and Sterlite Tech, so watch out for that. Aurobindo Pharma has gotten 0 observations and a classification of no action indicated from the US FDA inspection at the Telangana plant. So Aurobindo Pharma comes in focus for that reason. Watch out for that stock. In the same vein, Cipla, unfortunately, the Pithampur plant inspection gets an official action indication classification from the US FDA. The OAI status usually causes delay and withholding of pending product approvals. So maybe, like I said, pharma will be in focus today. So watch out for Aurobindo as well as Cipla, as well as Piramal Pharma on results, of course. Now let's get the next plate, Dixon and Optimus. Import of electronics such as laptops and PCs will be allowed till October 31st without a license as per DGFT. Remember, 3 days ago, there was this notification that it's not allowed. The stocks, which are the local manufacturers, which is Dixon and Optimus, had rallied quite a bit. You might see a bit of a pullback there, so please be mindful for that. The long-term story still remains positive. From October 31st, if it's banned, if it is not allowed, then the local manufacturers obviously get a big uptick. But because they had run up so much, because the belief was that starting tomorrow it won't be allowed, and because they had run up, there might be a bit of a cool off. So let's wait and watch for that. NDTV, it's received the government permission to uplink and downlink 4 news. The 4 news channels are NDTV Rajasthan, NDTV Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, NDTV Gujarati, and NDTV Marathi. Standard disclaimer, of course, NDTV is owned by the Gautam Adani Group or the Adani Enterprises, which also owns 49% stake in Quintillion Business Media, which is the owner of BQ Prime. So be mindful of that. But maybe the stock reacts. I just thought it was important to highlight that. AMI Organics, the board has approved issuance of 4.43 lakh equity shares as a preferential issue. The issue price for AMI Organics has been kept at 1,169. The current market price is about 1,233.55. So AMI Organics comes in focus. The preferential allotment is happening at circa the current price, so no big changes there. ABB will consider a special dividend on August 11th board meeting. This could be interesting. Let's watch out for this. Then the results. I'm starting off with BHEL because they were not the best of numbers. Revenues were up 8% at 4,818 crores versus 516 crores. So that is great. They have inked some MOUs for green hydrogen, which is also great. But at the EBITDA level, 539 crores loss versus a loss of 392. The expectations was that they will reduce the loss to 92.7 crores. They haven't been able to do that. Net loss at 343 crores. Bloomberg estimate was 149 crores. So not the best of numbers. There are a bunch of brokerage notes out there for BHEL. So Antique has a buy with a target price of 110. CLS has a sell. The target price has been raised to 78 from 64. So, remains to be seen what BHEL does. But to my mind, the EBITDA performances look very shoddy, and that might weigh in on the stock today. So let's wait and watch. Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail, revenues are up 11% at 3,196 crores, but the EBITDA was down 37% at 292 crores versus 468 crores. Margins 9.14 versus 16.29. Net loss at 141 versus a net profit of 99. not the best of numbers, may react negatively. Then Britannia, if we can go to Britannia, the numbers, thank you. Revenues were up 8% at 4010 crores. The estimates were 4103, largely in line, if you will, on that base. But the margins at 17.2 versus 18.1, and a net profit of 36% at 455 versus estimates of 513 is the reason why Britannia has looked wobbly in terms of its performance, at least to my mind, and that is to be watched out for. The volume growth numbers too for Britannia were not the strongest, and therefore that is a problem. Flat volume growth versus expectations of 5 to 6% volume growth. The company said that local competition intensified as the commodity prices softened. Normally, and took price corrections to remain competitive. Normally, you would expect that with commodity prices coming off, it would show up in the margins. For Britannia, it didn't. The only positive is that the rural commentary looked okay, but these numbers, you would argue, relative to what it is expected, are a bit of a miss, and maybe Britannia reacts negatively today. I don't have any brokerage notes for you because the con call is today at, I think, 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. So most of the brokerages will write their verdict on Britannia only post that conference call. So we'll probably have to wait for that. Then some other results in focus. Rain Industries, a wobbly number. Revenues down 16%, net profit down 70%. Margins at 13.94 versus 21%, or 21.7% in fact. So a miss on all counts. Gujarat Ambuja, revenues down 8%, net profit down 38%, margins at 8.78% versus 13.12%. This is Gujarat Ambuja Exports that I'm talking about, and that stock will have a negative reaction today, so be mindful of that. Then some stocks which came out with mixed numbers. Revenues were down, but margins and bottom line were up. So PG Electroplast, revenues were down 25.93%, but net profit was up 46% because margin showed up 8.37 versus 4.88%. So mixed number, but margin performance strong. Phenotech Chemicals, revenues were down 2.6%, but net profit up 29% or 30% because margins moved from 19.32 to 23.83. Similar case with Shipping Corporation of India. Revenues were down 18%, but net profit was up 57%. Why? Because margins went up to 30% versus 20%. So in each of these three names, revenues not great, margins and bottom line great. Difficult to call out what will happen here. Easy to call out what could happen to CE Info because across line items it did well. Look at that. Net revenue or revenues up 37.53% at 89 crores versus Bloomberg estimate of 82 crores. EBITDA up 25% at 37 crores versus Bloomberg estimate of 31 crores. Margins, okay, maybe we don't have the graphics here, doesn't matter, but margins up 41.9%. Hear me out. Margins up 41.9% versus expectations of 37.53, and net profit up 32% at 32 crores versus expectations of 28 crores. So across line items, this one is done well. Delivery, revenues up 10% at 1929 crores versus 1745. EBITDA loss at 13 crores versus loss of 254 crores, and net loss at 894 versus loss of 3993 crores. Across many items, delivery is actually done really well. And while it's a loss still, but they're showing that inclination to reduce. Who knows, at these levels, it could become EBITDA break even maybe in a quarter or two. I don't know. I confess, unlike a Paytm which is guided or a Zomato which is guided, I do not know if delivery is guided. So you'll have to excuse me for that. Please do your due research as well. But it seems to be a good number. They've also appointed, if I'm not wrong, an NYU professor as an additional director as well, which is cited as a positive. So let's wait and watch. Delivery might react. Tata Investment, it's an investment company, so no margins, no this thing. I've just brought you the revenues and the net profit numbers, but they look rock solid. Maybe the stock reacts. In case it does, I thought I should bring it out. I confess ignorance again about knowing what will this do. Unlike a CE Info Systems, an investment company is not that easy to predict per se, but the numbers seem rock solid. Let's wait and watch. Essentially, the investment arm of the Tata Group per se. IDFC, NI up 36%, GNPA reduced, net NPA reduced, net profit up 61%, may react. Difficult to call Gujarat Fluoro, though largely it seems to have missed estimates, at least on the revenue front and the bottom line front, but the margins were slightly better than what the Bloomberg estimates were. So let's wait and watch if this reacts. Came out late Sunday. So that's to be watched out for. Some other key newsmakers, which I may not have mentioned before I get to the brokerage notes. So, aside of Aurobindo and Cipla and HFCL that I spoke about, Naveen Fluorine has gotten a plant closure notice. So that's to be watched out for. And Ganesha Ecosphere has gotten an order from Coca-Cola, no less. So that's to be watched out for. Then brokerage notes on the PSU banks. SBI came out during market hours on Friday. Ambit says that it's a high conviction buy, a target of 750. They say the higher balance sheet liquidity, which is 70% CD ratio and MCLR linked loan book of 40%. According to Ambit, puts SBI on a better footing on growth and margin trade-off over FY23 to 25 versus private banks as well. The asset quality continues to trend better than private banks, with 0.5% annualized net slippages. They expect a 13% earnings CAGR and average 16% ROE over the same period, and they value the bank at rupees 750 per share, implying standalone valuation of 1.2 times FY25 book value per share. You look at book value usually and not about the PE per se. The beauty is for SBI, the loan growth came off a bit, viewers, but even on that loan growth coming off, most brokerage notes that I read are constructive on SBI. I know some marquee investors very bullish on SBI. So in the banking space, while everybody's completely caught up with private banks per se, but the PSU banks have come of age, and in some of the cases like SBI, even though they've run up, they might still be providing a bang for the buck. Then Motilal Oswal note on BOB, they were buy with the target price of 240. Mixed quarter as PAT jumped in line with estimates, aided by higher other income, but NIMs declined. The business growth was modest, asset quality improved, and largely they maintained their earnings estimates and FY25 ROA, ROE at 1.2% and 16.9%. So if you believe the Motilal Oswal coverage on BOB, then it still remains a buy. This quarter, small mixed bag, maybe not a very strong reaction, but watch out for this one. Before we wrap up, some queries and some teasers. The queries, somebody's asking about a view on the chemical stocks. Well, the stocks have had now 24 months of a lull, if you will, 18 to 24 months, select names, though the fluorination companies have done well. But, you got to see what's happening on the price. As they say, the markets knows it best, and the markets are not reacting very adversely to weak numbers, which probably shows that bottoms are getting formed in select stocks. Some of the stocks are still very, very expensive, but in the weak names, two bottoms are getting formed. I would suspect that things might start looking better. Mihir Vora, in one of our talking point conversations, has given a beautiful view on chemical stocks if you want to hear that. So please do try and tune in on that. El Nino impact on ITC, but difficult to say. ITC is a lot more of sum of parts game currently. But I think the El Nino impact is largely discounted, my friend, on most of the FMCG names. I think the problem that they face is what could happen on volume growth and rural growth. If rural doesn't show the same strength as is being envisaged currently, then that might become a problem. Let's wait and watch. ITC is, like I said, a lot more than just FMCG, by the way. But yeah, I think the next quarter commentary would probably give a better idea of El Nino. For now, not too many people are really saying that it's a big factor. People are saying it's a thing to watch as to what happens to consumer demand in the July, August, September quarter. Tata Consumer, of course, was not too perturbed. Very quickly, the things that we'll do today on BQ Prime before we wrap up. It's been a long trade setup today, but you will hear from Dheeraj Agarwal of Ambit on Talking Point today. So that's to be watched out for. And so that's coming in at about 10 a.m. And a clutch of very interesting conversations on results as well during the course of the day today. Lots of them, by the way. So you might want to tune in for some of those. Thanks so much for tuning into the trade setup.